Okay, today we start with studying a topic from chapter 4, which is about studying nervous system. Well, today we have nervous system. Basically, human body involves or is composed of 11 main organ systems. One of them is nervous system, the system that receives signals and information from outside and inside of body, and in brain processing of these information take place, and then brain works to monitor and control both internal and external environments through controlling the contraction and relaxation of three types of muscles, like cardiac muscles, smooth muscles, and more importantly, cardiac muscles. Meanwhile, brain also controls and regulates the secretion of hormones and other secretions by other glands in your body. So nervous system is the system that detects change from both sides of body, internally and externally. So this system is composed of three main parts. One of them, which is brain, and second one, which is spinal cord, and the third one, which are known as nerves. So first of all, I'd like to draw a figure to explain and show the location and the relation between these three components in our body. Let's say this figure represents your central organ of nervous system, which is known as brain. Recall that brain is characterized by having a highly folded external structure. So here we have brain, the central organ of nervous system that's located inside your skull. And right below brain, we have another component. Right below brain, we have another component which is called, this blue one, which is a part of brain called cerebellum, and the black one, which is also another part of brain called brainstem. But today I'd like to focus on the second part of brain, of nervous system, which is known as spinal cord. Basically, spinal cord extends from your neck throughout your vertebral column. This yellow color represents your spinal cord, which extends from your neck throughout the bones of vertebral column to the middle of your backbone. So this yellow structure represents the second part of nervous system, which is called spinal cord. And later that, we have extensions of bundles of neurons. We have extensions of bundles of neurons that are extended from spinal cord to your neck. We also have extensions of bundles of neurons that are extended from your brain to your head. These black lines represent nerves. And same here, these black lines too, that are extended from spinal cord, called nerves too. So we have some nerves that are extended from brain to control your head overall, mainly your eyes, your face, muscles of your tongue, your neck, and so on. But from the spinal cord, here you can see extensions of bundles of neurons that are responsible for controlling your shoulders, your arms, even your chest and your abdomen, the muscles and glands of your chest and abdomen and finally those nerves that control the muscles and glands of your close to your abdomen and pelvis. And finally, we have longest nerves in body that are dedicated to control your lower limbs or the legs. So these black lines even represent, you know, nerves. So so we have three main parts. Brain, number one. Well, we have three organs of nervous system. First of all, brain. Second one, spinal cord. And third one, we have nerves. So brain is located inside your head, your skull, while the yellow one, which is spinal cord, located throughout inside the whole present in the vertebral column. And the black lines represent a bundle of hundreds, even thousands of neurons extended from brain and spinal cord to control your body, known as nerves. So let's study the relation between these three things in order to understand the role and function of the whole system. So assume that, let me explain how nervous system detects an information from your body and how it reacts to that particular information. Well, assume that this is, let's say this is your arm. Assume that this is your arm. Well, and let's say this is your hand. Okay, here we have a specialized kind of cell that is called the building block of the system, which is known as neuron. So nervous system has a building block cell called neuron. Well, from now on, we call neurons as building block cells of this system. Okay, inside your hand, here we have a particular, let's say, okay, assume that here we have a specialized neuron cell within your hand that's called a neuron or sensory neuron. This neuron cell, basically, this neuron cell which is present inside your hand is responsible for detecting change from your skin. So let's say here we have a flame, something, a candle. This candle, let's say, makes your neuron cell beneath your skin to get activated, to feel the change in temperature. So once this neuron detects this heat, okay, it creates an information in the form of electrical signal and transmits this information as a wave of electricity, and transmits this information throughout your arm, throughout a particular nerve to spinal cord, and then from the spinal cord the information reaches your brain, and within the brain a specialized processing takes place. Within your brain, a specialized processing takes place to understand the information and to make a reply, a response to that particular information, to that particular data. So in response, on the other side, another neuron, let's say, creates a response and goes down from the brain to the spinal cord, and then leaves the spinal cord through a specialized nerve, and then goes to a muscle. In this case, the muscle, let's say, is biceps. your muscle, a muscle of top side of your arm, which is called biceps, this muscle. So it's the responsibility, it's the function of this neuron to tell this muscle to contract this way, to tell this muscle to contract, to make a reflex, and to move your hand away from the source of heating, from the candle. So this is how your nervous system, let's say, receives a particular information from somewhere, and how brain detects the brain, let's say, interprets the information and creates a specialized response to that particular sense. So we have three processes. One of them, number one, detecting a change by a specialized sensory neuron and transmitting this information through a nerve to the spinal cord and to brain, and brain performs processing to interpret and understand the data and to create a specialized response. And the third part of the process is to make, let's say, a muscle to contract, to make a reflex, to make your hand, let's say, بۆی لە سۆرسی ئینفۆرمێشنەکە لە سۆرسی گەرمکردنەکە دوور بکەوێتەوە this way. Okay, so today I also would like to explain how a neuron cell works. First, we have to study the basic components of a neuron cell, and secondly, we have to study the role and participation of each part of this neuron cell in your body. So, as you know, and as I explained it before, this blue cell, which is drawn here, this blue cell is called a neuron cell. A neuron cell. As I said before, neurons are building blocks of this system, and they are specialized for detecting change and sending information from some region to another in the form of electrical signals. So let's study the basic components of a neuron cell. A neuron cell components. So actually, a neuron cell has three main components plus other, let's say, some other assistants and branches. The main three components are cell body. Second one, longest extension in the cell, from the cell body, which is called axon. And thirdly, we have many but short extensions from the cell body known as dendrites. And finally, we have some other components like for example, axon terminals, okay, like myelin sheath, and let's say node of Ranvier. So in order to understand how the whole system works, in order to understand how a specialized data, a specialized information can be detected by a neuron and can be transmitted by the same neuron. So, and in order to understand how the whole three parts of the system cooperate together, we have to understand how its building block works. We have to understand how a neuron cell functions. Without understanding this, it's to some extent impossible how the whole system works. So let's study the main components of a neuron cell, and let's study their role in the body. So I'm going to draw a standard neuron cell. So this figure represents a neuron cell. Okay, the main part of a neuron cell, which basically usually looks like a star, this main part, which contains nucleus, this main part is called cell body. Cell body is the part of neuron cell that's surrounded by cell membrane. This blue line basically represents cell membrane, and this cell body contains nucleus, cytoplasm, and other organelles, majority of cellular organelles of the neuron. So this cell body, which is surrounded by cell membrane, creates some extensions, creates some membranous extensions. These membranous extensions can be subdivided into two parts, into two kinds. Majority of them are short but many, and one of them is single but long. Those that are short but many are known as, dendrites. These things, these short extensions from the cell membrane are known as, dendrites. Okay, so here we have the cellular dendrites. So dendrites. This is how we describe and how we have to understand dendrites. Dendrites are short extensions, but many in number. Okay, their role is to let's say they receive information and transmit it toward the cell body. Let me explain this one. Assume that this is your skin. This yellow line represents your skin, and assume that this is something, a knife or a needle that touch your skin. Let's say a nail or a needle that touch your skin. This information can be detected by dendrites of a neuron, and this detection creates an information within the dendrites, and it's the responsibility of the dendrite to transmit this information toward the cell body, to tell the cell body that there's an information and we have to transmit it from the area of touch to, let's say, brain. Okay, on the other side, once the cell body receives that particular information, it also transmits the same information to another state, to another part of the cell. So we studied cell body and its role. We also studied, dendrites and how do they participate in a neuron cell. And let's explain axon. The third main part of a neuron cell is called axon. So I'm going to draw it, in black. This black line, let's say, is called dendrite. Is called axon. This black line is called axon. Okay, and this is how we explain, axons of a neuron. Axon. So axon is single but long. It's the longest extension from the cell body of a neuron. This axon receives information from cell body and transmits it as electrical impulse, as the form in the form of electrical signal or electrical impulse, electrical impulse throughout the axon to the other side, to the end of the cell, as a form of as electrical impulse to the axon terminals. So basically, the end of axons are other short extensions known as axon terminals. So these extensions at the end of axons called axon terminals. We later study what is the role of the axon terminals. Well, so once the axon receives that particular information from the cell body, it changes the information into an electrical impulse, an electrical signal, and will transmit the information as the form of electrical signal throughout the axon to the end of the axon until it reaches the axon terminal. So these blue arrows represent the electrical impulse that goes through the axons. Okay, and so it's also important to study something, a specialized thing that's called myelin sheath. But before that, let me tell you something. Well, as I said before, as I explained it before, it's the responsibility of brain to control and monitor internal and external organs. Brain can also communicate with your sense organs, with your five main sense organs like eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and skin, plus internal parts. So brain can cooperate and can regulate with, can control so many regions, so many things like other neurons, other muscles in your body, and glands. So each single neuron cell may communicate with one of the following three things. Each neuron cell in the nervous system can communicate, can transmit signals to one of the following three things. Sometimes they communicate, they transmit signals to a muscle. For example, when you decide to bend your elbow, your brain sends a signal to your biceps to contract and to bend your elbow. This is how a neuron communicates with a muscle to control its contraction. In other cases, a neuron may communicate with a specialized gland. Let's say here we have a specialized gland cell or gland region. For example, we have a specific region that's called, let's say, adrenal gland, located on both kidneys. The inner part of adrenal gland, which is called adrenal medulla, is controlled by neurons coming from your brain to control the secretion of hormones. So as if to say, your brain tells your adrenal medulla to secrete adrenaline and noradrenaline while you are stressed. In other cases, a neuron may communicate with another neuron. So here we have three possibilities. A neuron has three possibilities to communicate with the different parts of your body. One of them is a muscle cell. and another is a gland cell, and the third one, which is the last one, is a neuron cell. Okay, then let's start with explaining myelin sheath. Good. Basically, there we have two main types of neurons in the nervous system. Let's say some of them, the axon of some of them are covered with a protective membrane, let's say a supportive cell called myelin sheath, and in other neurons, the axon, let's say, stays naked. It's not covered by any kind of cell, which is called axons without myelin sheath. I'm going to draw a neuron that is surrounded by a specialized kind of cell that creates myelination. So let me explain this one. Okay, so let's say this thing represents a cover, something that surrounds the axon from the axon of certain neurons, not all neurons. So some neurons, the axon of some neurons are surrounded by a kind of cell which is known as Schwann cell. Okay, let me draw this. Good. So these things represent myelin sheath. And let me explain the component of myelin sheath more. I'm trying to cut this region from top to bottom to get a cross section from this part. So we will get a circular structure in the middle, axon. This is a cross section of that particular axon. This axon is surrounded by something that is called myelin sheath. But what's myelin sheath itself? Myelin sheath is, this is myelin sheath, myelin sheath. Myelin sheath is a specialized kind of cell that covers and surrounds axon for the following reason. Myelin sheath works to speed up the transmission of information from the cell body to the axon terminal. So as if to say, it decreases time of sending information from one area to another. This kind of myelin sheath, let's say, is produced by a cell called Schwann cell. Is produced by a kind of cell which is called Schwann cell. But we also have to know that Schwann cells, the axon of neurons located in the nerves, not in the brain and spinal cord. Only the axon that are located in the nerves, the black lines, not the axon of neurons that are present in the brain and spinal cord. So Schwann cell is only found around the axons of nerves, not in the brain or spinal cord. So let me tell you this. Schwann cell only found in neurons of nerves. So it's also okay to say Schwann cell is absent. Schwann cell is absent in brain and spinal cord. Actually, even neurons of brain and spinal cord, some neurons of brain and spinal cord have myelination. But the myelination in cells, in neurons of brain and spinal cord is not created by Schwann cell. They are created by another specialized cell which is called oligodendrocyte. پەلە منهجەکەمانە ئەوەیان نییە. You only have to know that. You only have to learn that axons of neurons of nerves are surrounded by what? By Schwann cell. And this cell that wraps around the axon, this cell is called, let's say, Schwann cell. This cell is called Schwann cell. So to summarize things, and finally, we have node of Ranvier. These gaps that are found between each two neighbored myelin sheath, these gaps are called node of Ranvier. So it's important to know the role and function of either both myelin sheath and node of Ranvier. Myelin sheath speeds up the transmission of signals throughout the axon, and node of Ranvier is where that electrical change occurs. It's where, let's say, ions like sodium enter the cell and potassium leave the cell to create electricity, to create the power in order to transmit the message from the cell body to the end of the axon, or to transmit the message to a muscle cell to tell it to contract, to a gland cell to tell it to secrete something, or to a neuron cell to tell it to transmit the message from one area of the body to another. So this is how we summarize the main parts of nervous system. بأما بخيراي بلينوا. Chapter 4 is about studying nervous system and how it interacts with your sensory organs. We have three parts: brain, located in head; spinal cord, in your backbone; nerves, these black lines that are extended from both brain and spinal cord to control your entire body, to control muscles and even glands. So this figure represents how your nervous system responds to a particular information. Assume that your skin, a specialized neuron beneath your skin detects a change in temperature. So this feeling must be sent to brain through a specialized neuron to tell the brain what's going on there. So as a result, brain creates a particular response and tells a specialized muscle to contract to make a reflex, let's say, to protect your skin or your body. And then we have we studied and explained the structure and function of main parts of the building block of nervous system, which is called neuron. This figure represents a complete neuron cell, a complete, let's say, standard neuron cell that's made up of cell body, longest extension axon, and short but many extensions dendrites. Dendrites are responsible for detecting change and transmitting the information toward the cell body, and cell body gives the information to the axon, and axon must create action potential or electrical signal to transmit the message from the cell body to the end of the axon to give the information, to give the electrical signal to a muscle, a gland, or another neuron. And in order to speed up the transmission of this information, there we have myelin sheath, a cover made up of Schwann cell in nerves, not in brain or spinal cord. This cover speeds up the transmission of messages. So this is how neurons in your body work to feel change, to detect change, and to transmit the information from the area of detection to your brain. We have 5 main sense organs like eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and skin. They contain thousands, millions of neurons. All can detect change and all can transmit information to your brain to tell your brain to monitor and to know about your situation.